Hey guys, welcome back to another Hack the Box machine walkthrough video. Today we're going to be tackling the box Oopsie in the starting point track. This is going to be the second machine in tier 2 that is free. So we can go ahead and jump right into it since I've already spun up my machine. First thing that we're going to do, we're going to head over to my Kali machine, and I'm already in my Hack the Box directory. I just like to create this so I have some place to save the output. So I'm just going to make a directory Oopsie, and then we're going to cd into it once it's created. And then we're also going to make an nmap directory because that's going to be the first thing that we're going to want to run. So now that we have those created, we can go ahead and use sudo nmap, sv for service enumeration, sc for scripts, v for verbose output, lowercase o, capital A, to get all of the output formats, and then we're going to do nmap, and then we will do Oopsie. We'll name it the name of the box. And we also need to grab the IP address of the box. So let's go ahead and grab that, head back over to our virtual machine, paste that in there, and then this will take probably a few seconds to run, so I will jump back with you guys once this is done running. Okay, so it looks like this finished running and we have two ports open on this machine. The first port is going to be 22, which is SSH, and it also looks like it identified it as an Ubuntu machine, so that's good to know. Let's just keep in mind that we potentially are able to SSH into this machine at some point. Then also we're going to have a web server, which is Apache, running on port 80. So whenever I see that there is a web service open, I typically like to go after that first because there is a lot of different avenues that you can attack and gain extra information on a target just from web presence. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll go over to our browser and we will just go to HTTP. Oops. And then paste our IP address and see what we have as the default page here. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bit smaller so we can see what's going on. It looks like it's some sort of automotive page. Typically what I like to do when there's not anything apparent here is you kind of click around on these links, see if any of these links actually work. Which it looks like all these are just redirecting to the pound symbol. There's nothing on learn more, features, services. Then it doesn't look like there's quite anything to click around on. If we head down here, I actually just noticed this. It says please log in to get access to the service. So I'm assuming there's a login page somewhere. If we hit Control U, we can inspect source. We will just scan through this really quick. Once again, we're going to check some file extensions, see if there's any JavaScript, potentially any PHP, maybe some Ruby, who knows. You never know what's running on this back end. So let's just check and see if we can get an idea based on any links that are on here. Okay, so I see a CDN-CGI, and I also see some JS. This is important. Let's take note of that that's a directory. There's also a scripts directory here. All good things to note. And then at the very bottom here, I actually see there's a cdn/cgi/login/script.js. Let's go ahead and head over and see if we have access to this, except for we want to get rid of view source. Okay, so here we go. Now we have a login page on this machine. And as you saw, that it said to log in to get access to the service. So maybe we can try like admin, try to log in. No, that doesn't look. Maybe like root. Try like one more that's common, like admin, and then password. Okay, so it looks like it is going to have some type of actual username and password combination to get in there. I do see login as guest, which is interesting. Then actually I'm hovering here, but it'll go away. If you look at the bottom left-hand corner as I hover here, It looks like it's setting a HTTP parameter at the end there. It looks like a PHP parameter actually. You have that question mark guest equals true. So I wonder if you set that guest equal to false, if we are able to do something there. So that might be something that we can alter on Burp Suite. But let's go ahead and poke around. It looks like we're actually able to access the repair management system if we use this guest login. Let's see if we can do something as an account. Interesting. It looks like there's an access ID and a name and an email associated with just the guest account. I would definitely, look into this access ID. I think that's particularly interesting. That tells me that there's probably a ID for other users that we might be able to increment this or alter this ID to maybe get another user. So that was account, right? Let's go over to branding. Okay, so it looks like there's some other stuff. I don't know if that's going to be of interest to us or not. Let's go over to client. Again, once again, this is interesting. It looks like there's a client ID. Anytime you see an ID associated with a user, that's something to pay attention to. And then uploads. Uploads is definitely interesting to us. That means we could potentially upload a web shell and then use that to gain a reverse shell at some point. So this looks like it requires admin rights or super admin rights. So let's figure out how to get some super admin rights on this machine. But before we do that, we need to figure out how to get normal access, because right now we're just a guest. So if we head back over to maybe like account, let's check out account. I did notice up here that they are setting some variables, and we saw this when it said guest equals true. So maybe if we set this, so it looks like this, the content parameter is what tab we're on, and then the ID is set to what appeared to be the client ID. Or something along the lines. Maybe those just line up, but either way, I think this ID, if we alter this, let's change this ID to a 1, change it to a 1, and we have the access ID for the admin and the email of the admin. Okay, so we don't know the admin's password yet. So say we have the access ID of the admin, and we know that we have the username of the admin now. Let's check and see, since they're doing this all with HTTP parameters, let's see if they're setting maybe some cookies. There could be some cookies set. They might be doing some local authentication here. So let's see if we go over to storage, cookies. Interesting. Okay, so they are. So it looks like the role is guest. So what if we change that to admin and then change the admin's user value to this access ID right here? Okay, so then let's see, now that we have the admin cookie set, let's see if we can access this uploads page. Okay, so now we can access this uploads page, and I would say this is probably where our enumeration phase is going to stop, and now we're probably going to be moving into the footholds phase, or the initial foothold phase of this machine. Okay, so now that we know that we can upload files to this website, what we want to do is attempt to upload a reverse shell. And what we really want to pay attention when doing this is we want to see what type of files this accepts, and you kind of want to stick with the technology that already exists on the back end when uploading a web shell. So we already noted that this is running on PHP. So let's go ahead and look for a PHP web shell on our machine. So you can actually find PHP web shells default on Kali if you're running some of the more up-to-date versions of Kali. So if we just go ahead, we'll just like cat one of them out. They're going to be located in user, share, web shells, and then you can tab again to see what technologies exist because that's how they're sorted. So it looks like we have a PHP one. So let's go ahead and tab again. And then we just have one called PHP reverse shell. So let's just do that. And we're just going to cat it out, see what's going on in here. So we'll definitely need to set the port that this is listening on and our IP address. So let's go ahead and we're going to, I'm going to come back up here and copy this, this path really quick so I don't have to retype that in. So what we'll do is we'll copy that. And I'm also going to grab my IP address. So it's going to be the ton0 IP address. So then I'll just grab another terminal. And then we're going to copy this into our current directory. And then what we'll do is we'll use nano on, not on that. we'll use nano on the PHP reverse shell in our current directory. Okay, so I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and make sure we have our IP address there. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to find the IP that it's listening on, which this needs to be our IP address now. So this is where we need to grab our own IP address. So let's go ahead and copy that. We'll come back down here and paste that in. And then we can change the port that it's listening on. I just like to always do quad 4, just the lucky 4s for you. So once we have that written in, what we can do is we can do Control O to write that, hit enter, and then Control X to exit. And now we have that PHP shell written in our current directory for this HackTheBox Oopsie. So what we'll do is we'll close that terminal now and we'll clear that. We'll come back up to our admin panel and let's see if we can upload this file. Oh, whoops. we need to first pick the file. So let's go to home, HackTheBox. It's in Oopsie, and then we have this PHP reverse shell. So let's go ahead and pick that, and then we'll upload it. Cool. Okay, so now that this has been uploaded, the next step is to figure out where this has been uploaded to on the actual target. Because what we'll need to do is we'll need to navigate to that file to trigger the code to run, and we also need to set up a netcat listener. So we'll go ahead and set our netcat listener up to catch the reverse shell, and then once we have that listening, we'll go ahead and navigate to the location where our PHP shell has been uploaded to. That'll trigger it to run, and it'll send it back to us to catch it. So step 1 was figuring out where that reverse shell had been uploaded to. So what we can go ahead and do is instead of sitting here and clicking around, we don't know. It could be uploaded to some random directory. So what we'll go ahead and do is we'll run a GoBuster. We'll run a GoBuster scan on this target to get the address where this is located at. So let's go ahead and, whoops, we'll copy that. We'll come back, paste our IP address in, and then we'll do -w for the word list. We'll do user, share, derb, I spelled share wrong, share, derb, word lists, and then let's just do small. We'll also we'll do X for extensions, and then we'll do PHP to see if it's been uploaded anywhere. Okay, so I'll run this, and I'll jump back again with you guys here in 1 second once we figure out if there's any directories that seem logical that our shell would be in. Okay, so the scan finished, and we have a couple 301s here. Images is potential, probably not though. The one that sticks out to me is uploads. Seems pretty explanatory. It had a 301, but all it did was just move to the /uploads directory. So we'll go ahead and we will copy that. However, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have our netcat listener set first. So what we can do is we'll do netcat L for listening mode, V for verbose output, N for no DNS name resolution, and then P for the port. We do want to make sure this is listening on the same port that we set in our reverse shell. So we have quad 4 once again. So we'll go ahead and set that to listen. And then what we can do here is let's go to the uploads directory and see if we have permission. Okay, we don't, but let's see if we can navigate directly to the file. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if it was there. So it's php reverse shell.php. I'm just going to double check that once again. php reverse shell.php. Okay, so we'll navigate directly to there. And then we should have caught a reverse shell back on our machine, which it looks like we have. Okay, so now we have a shell as www data. One thing that we can do here is upgrade our shell, because right now we don't have any tab complete. We don't have the ability to go back or forth. So what we want to do is we want to do Python, and then we will do single quotations. We'll do import pty semicolon, and then do pty.spawn open parentheses, double quotations, / bin bash, close quotations, open parentheses, and then single parentheses. Okay, so it doesn't look like we have Python. What we can try, though, is Python 3. We can do the same exact thing. Okay, so I tried Python 3, but I goofed a little bit, so you're going to need -c is what I was forgetting. So we'll just go ahead and copy that now and paste that in. And there we go. Okay, so now we have an upgraded shell, and we can check out what's on this machine here. So while we're checking out what's on this machine, it's important to note I had already said that we are www data, which is common that you get from a web shell. The only problem is that www data has almost little to no permissions. So what we want to do is at least get a standard user on the machine. So what we can do to see the list of users on the machine is we want to cat out etc password. And it looks like we're able to do that. I'm actually going to minimize our local machine so we can see what's going on here a little bit better. Let's just check who's on this machine. So we have a bunch of standard users. We have the nobody user. We have a pollinate. And you want to be able to look and see that they have bin bash, because that means that they can use a shell. Okay, so it looks like there is a Robert user. So maybe we can find Robert's password on here. So what we can do is we can actually, now that we've found that there's a Robert user, let's see if we can cd to Robert's home directory, see if we have those permissions. Okay, we do. So maybe we can, let's see what's in here. Okay, and that's going to be the user flag. Okay, so we will cat out the user flag, and we will make note of this. So let's copy that, and then we will just echo that into a file really quick. We'll just call that user.text. And now what we want to do is we want to try to log in as the Robert user. So if we go back to where we were previously at, which was var www html. Oh, I just typed that in. So we want to cd to var www html, and then check out what's in here. So we want to cd to, I don't know, where we were just at. Let's see that cdn-cgi directory. That looks pretty interesting. Let's check out that. So let's try to cat out db.php. Oh, and it looks like there's only one line, and it's a MySQL connection. to Robert. Okay, so now we know that this is Robert's username and password. So let's go ahead and put this away somewhere. Let's just do echo and then that information right there into creds.txt. Then let's try to switch users into Robert. So we'll just do su Robert, and then let's see if this is his password. Shift V. And it looks like we switched users to Robert, so we can run who am I, and we are now Robert. Okay, so that will be the initial foothold for the box. Okay, so now what we need to do is we need to focus on getting privilege escalation. So we have Robert now, which has more privileges than www data. However, we want to move from Robert to the root account on this machine. So this might be a little tricky to use that Python server method to get linps up, which is typically what I would do to start enumerating potential paths for privilege escalation just on this machine. So one thing that we can do, we can use a couple manual methods that might just be easier, since this shouldn't be too difficult since it is it's an easy machine on HackTheBox. So we can use sudo-l, which is going to list out the programs that we can use sudo on for this particular user, which we will see here in 1 second. So we can do that. Okay, so it says Robert is not part of the sudoers group. So Robert cannot run anything as root. Sometimes you might see sudo l, and then we could just use like sudo bin bash and get a root shell. Unfortunately, that is not the case. So let's see what permissions Robert has. And you can do that with the ID command. So it looks like he has user ID Robert, he's the group ID Robert, and then the groups that he's a part of is Robert, and this is interesting. He's a part of the bug tracker group. So this is definitely something that we want to find artifacts of on the machine, because this is not a standard group on the machine. So there might be something that we're able to exploit with this bug tracker ID. So let's go ahead. We can use, so I like locate, but there is, we'll see if they have locate actually. Let's do locate bug tracker, see if there's anything called bug tracker on the machine. All right, so it looks like there is. So there's a binary called bug tracker, which is kind of like what I was talking about. So the same way that you could use sudo bin bash and kind of use the sudoers group to execute the bin or the bash binary and get it to cause a root shell or spin up a root shell. Sometimes you can trick binaries into running and then giving us root permissions. So this is super interesting, and I have a feeling this is going to be the way we privilege escalate. So let's go ahead. We'll do lsla, and we'll do file, or we need lsla on this particular binary. So let's grab that. We'll paste it, and we'll also run the file command on it to see what's going on there. Okay, so it looks like we have read, write, execute privileges on the bug tracker binary. It is a ELF64-bit binary. It's dynamically linked, which all looks pretty standard, and it's not stripped. Okay, so we should be able to execute it then. So let's see if we can just go ahead and do this. Provide bug ID. What if we did, I don't know, let's just put a bug ID in it first and do one. So bug ID 2. Bug. Okay, so it looks like it's got some type of maybe like database that it's querying and giving us back a bug number. So let's try this again, just give it something else. Let's see if we give it like bin bash, except for I just messed up when I typed that in. Let's try that again. Let's do bin bash. Interesting. Okay, so it looks like it's running the cat command, and then all these are located in the root reports directory, and then it's catting out the file that is associated with the ID that we put in. So if we looked up, there should be like a root reports 2, and then it's catting out the 2 file. So I wonder if we are able to write a file to root reports that would spawn a bin bash, spin up a bin bash shell, and we could get it to run root for us. So let's go ahead and try that out. So I also failed to mention one important detail here, and that is that there is the set UID bit set on this executable, which means that the executable is always going to run as the owner, regardless of who runs it. And as you can see here, it's owned by root. So that means that this executable is always going to run as root. So that way, if we create that file and make it run bin bash, it's going to run as root. So let's go ahead and get that file entered and see if we can get it to do that. So the first thing that we want to do, and one important thing to note, is that this did not specify the whole path to the file cat. So what we can do is we can cd to the temp directory, if I can put the right thing in first. So we'll cd to the temp directory, and then we will echo into that file. We'll do bin sh, which is just shell. And then we'll put that into the file name cat. Then what we can do is we can give cat the executable bit. And now that this has the executable bit, we can add it to path. And we'll do that by export path is equal to temp $$ path. So what we just did is we set our current directory to the path. So now if we just echoed out path, which would just look like this is just an environment variable. So if we just echo this out, temp is now set in path. And now that temp is set to path and that has the cat executable in it, what it'll do is it'll read this one first, and we will get it to cat out the contents of cat, or it'll execute the contents of cat, which is just bin shell. So we should get a root shell. So if we just execute the bug tracker variable now, I said variable, bug tracker executable, and then just give it any arbitrary ID, it should give us a root shell because it should be executing bin bash. And look, it does. That's pretty cool. So if we do who am I now, it should say root. So now we should be able to cd to root and get the root flag. So what we'll do is we'll cat out root.text. Okay, so I forgot that we had set cat to our path. So I was catting this out, and it was just listing the name of the file. So what you can do if you don't want to remove it from path is you can just use head, which gives you the first couple lines of the file, which will do the same thing. So we can go ahead and copy our root flag, and I will just echo that in. I'll just do this, and this will be root.text. And then we can head back to answer the final questions. So now that we're back, we will finish answering up some of these questions so we can wrap this box up. So for task 1, it says, with what kind of tool can we intercept web traffic? So that's going to be a proxy. And you can actually use some proxies like Burp Suite, as I mentioned in the initial parts of this lab. However, we didn't necessarily need it. We could just alter what was in the URL. For some different types of web traffic analysis, you will need it to see what types of parameters are being passed, maybe some headers. In this case, we were able to utilize what was being passed through the URL and just in the local cache in the cookies to gain access to what we needed to gain access to. And task 2, it says what is the file or what is the path to the directory on the web server that returns a login page. So if you remember right, this was cdn/cgi/login. And that was linked in the source code of the home page. Then it says task 3, what can be modified in Firefox to get access to the upload page? And that was going to be a cookie. If you remember right, we set the values of the cookie to get admin rights to the page. And then now we're on task 4. This is what is the access ID of the admin user, and that is 34322. You would see that on the page when we went through that. Task 5, it says on uploading a file, what directory does the file appear in on that server? We found this via GoBuster script that was /uploads. Task 6, what is the file that contains the password that is shared with the Robert user? That ended up being db.php, and that was in that cdn/cgi directory. So enter that in. What executable is run with the option /group bug tracker to identify all files owned by the bug tracker group? So this is actually going to be find. However, if you remember right, we used locate. The first thing that we used was ID to find the group that Robert was a part of, which happened to be that bug tracker group. I'm assuming in their official walkthrough they use find and then use some other switches to find that bug tracker executable. In our case, we just did locate bug tracker, and it found that there was a binary in user bin. But the answer to this one is going to be find. Task 8 is regardless of which user starts running the bug tracker executable, what user privileges will it use to run? And that is going to be root. So I kind of talked about that, and that is because it has the set UID bit set. So that is, or the set user ID bit set. And that means that the owner of the executable, which happened to be root in that case, is always going to execute that particular binary. And as I just said down here in task 9, this is going to be what does the SUID, or what does SUID stand for? That's going to be set owner user ID. And once again, I'm not sure if these need to be capitalized or not, but okay. So in task 10, it says what is the name of the executable being called in an insecure manner? And that is cat. So we saw that we altered the path of where cat's being called from. So we need the user flag and the root flag. However, I will let you guys submit those for yourself, and I will catch you guys in the last of the starting point machines next time when we do vaccine. All right, thank you guys.